and welcome into Getting Help from Uncle Sam. Well, it's right around the corner. This has got to be the election. This has been the longest in history. From the time we had the initial election, and then it went into a runoff, and then the runoff got pushed off, and still the general elections in November. Today I have with me Barry Moore. You are a candidate for District 2 U.S. House of Representatives, replacing Martha Roby.
That is correct, Mr.
Barry, the last time you and I sat here and did an interview, there was no pandemic and there was no unrest in the United States. And my biggest concern, and my viewers are mad about this, we're saying, what in the world have we got a Congress for that can't control things?
Well, I think actually it's the leadership in Congress, Mr. Jack.
Okay.
If you look at the situation, Pelosi is just kind of recused, and when you start supporting the far left that dramatically, what happens is, and you saw it a few years ago when Bernie Sanders was running for president, they would upstage him at his own events, and then he couldn't set them down. And when you start going against the rule of law, which Congress passes law, but if they're not willing to go out and say, law enforcement officers, we need to enforce the law, we need to, there are obviously some missteps from time to time in society, but you must stand in law and order. If you don't, you lose control. And that's what's happening in Seattle and other cities around the world, or in the country, at least for sure, is that the mayors and governors, as the president sets back and lets them lead, they're not stepping up and using law enforcement in the proper manner to control order. And then they're the same people that would tell you, hey, you don't need a gun to protect yourself, you don't need a weapon to protect yourself, you'll be able to call the police. And now they're wanting to defund the police, and that just is going to create a lot of
Send in a social worker.
And I look, I have family and friends that are social workers, but they are not equipped to go into some of these environments, especially in some of these inner cities, and try to control that situation. And the citizens suffer when there's failure to lead. And we must get back to the idea of protecting our citizens and enforcing law. And the same thing said, those police officers that misstepped with the George Floyd case, they have been arrested.
Absolutely.
So let that play out in court.
Justice is going to be taken care of.
That's exactly right.
If you just let it work the way it's supposed to work.
You cannot have mob rule. You have to have law and order, and we have to, as imperfect as our system is, the best man has ever come up with to govern ourselves and to control and work through, and even the minority gets a representation. And that's a beautiful thing, because in mob rule, minority has no representation.
Absolutely. It's tough.
It's tough.
When we talk about the pandemic here, again, a lot of people have been in Congress a long time. And we're sitting here with this pandemic between the National Institute of Health, the Federal Drug Administration, and the CDC. They employ 45,000 people. They've got a $53.3 billion a year budget, and we're sitting here with a pandemic. Was somebody asleep at the switch? And what do we need to do to make sure, if you get in there, that you look at these organizations and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do to serve the people? Because that's all they're up there for.
At the end of the day, it truly is public service. And my years in Alabama House, I was always considered that dependable conservative vote. But Ronald Reagan said the government's idea on the economy is if it's moving, you tax it. If it keeps moving, you regulate it. When it fails, you subsidize it. But what they've taxed and regulated, most of the common sense out of the process. And so we do have some bureaucracies that have grown and become bloated, have become job programs more than public service programs, and we have to look at that. It's not fair to our citizens. As your government, as your leaders, we have a responsibility to serve you from a humble approach, but obviously it's our job to serve, not to go up there and make a career out of this.
Right. Yeah, one of the things I did a little looking at things from the pandemic, and one of the things I said in one of my talks was the fact that you're going up there to represent us, not to rule us.
Absolutely.
And they turn around, it looks like, now you work for me rather than I work for you.
I walked away from the Alabama House of Representatives after 2 terms. I could have been reelected from now on. I was popular in my district, but it's not about the power, but it's so intoxicating. And I saw it even in the 2010 class in the Alabama House. So many people that were well-intentioned got up there, and the special interests get their hooks in them, and the idea of getting reelected becomes more important than doing what you told people you're going to do. And so they just want to get reelected. They want to make a career out of it. I am not that person. I actually do not enjoy government. I love serving people, but politics is not my thing.
I know.
So I've been recruited. The president's team recruited me to run in 2018. The Republican Party recruited me to run for the Alabama House, and so when people come and ask me to go serve, I'm willing, but it is certainly not something that's always fun. You know that. And but it's part of the process. We have callings on our lives sometimes, and we don't understand what we're called to do or why we're asked to do what we're asked to do. But we have a responsibility to step up, and I'm willing to go serve if the people want to send me.
So the election's right around the corner.
It is.
If somebody wants to get a hold of you to find out any more about your views, how do they do that?
2 ways.
And we'll put it on the screen, too.
The www.barrymoreforcongress.com.
Okay.
And then Barry Moore Republican for Congress on Facebook.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Jack.
And good luck. It's right around the corner.
I appreciate you.
And remember this, these people are here to represent you, not to rule you. Find out what's in their heart. Very important. And we'll be right back right after this.